Here is a few instances of where they tell you that they're going to lie. This is the first chairman of the UN's Climate Panel Science Panel, Sir John Horton. He wrote in a book on the subject, "Unless we announce disasters, no one will listen." Stephen Schneider, who says we have to offer up scary scenarios. Then Stephen Guilbeault of Greenpeace, global warming can mean colder. It can mean drier. It can mean wetter. That's what we're talking about. Where do they find this?
It'll fight on the beaches. It'll fight on the landing ground.
Thank you for joining us. You are listening to A Radio, and this is The Morning Moment. We're on weekdays, 11:45 Eastern. Follow us on Spreaker.com and click on the like button. This piece was brought to my attention by someone on Twitter, and I'll put the link of that on my website. But this is actually from 2018, which is even more interesting. The reason I point that out is Canadians somehow have sinned, according to the all-great and wonderful 57 genders Trudeau. Carbon-based fuels are evil and must be punished, and you must be punished for deeming to use them. The cost to Canadians will be immense going forward. Here's a challenge for you in Canada. Try contacting any federal MP on the subject of climate change. Good luck. I send messages to them daily, but not surprisingly, crickets. They are as scared to touch the subject of climate change as American politicians are of healthcare. The big issue here used to be gay and gayness, which is actually a word that was stolen from the everyday language that people used in the 1920s and onwards. It actually means happy. So the Overton window moves on, and this subject has been dumbed down to a simple term in Canada, hate speech. So that means it's verboten here. Now comes a further move on the Overton window, climate change. Now, anyone who dares speak in contradiction to the official line is a heretic, and you almost feel like you might be taken out and burnt like a Salem witch. Now we come on to the Trudeau fake carbon tax that will do nothing but bring into the government billions of dollars to spend on more of his wacky socialist schemes. Problem is, it's a lie. It's fake. Because while Canadians will start to see gradually over time a larger and larger economic gap beginning to grow between the US and Canada, the Canadian economy will start to first contract and then contract exponentially, and finally, if his wacky policies are allowed to continue, fail in the most catastrophic fashion. But here's the problem for Canadians. All the parties here, well, the majority of the parties, support this crazy concept. Now here's the rub, and here's the hypocrisy. This piece is from straight.com. The links will be on my site. And as I said earlier, this story really goes back to 2018. I want you to listen to this, and I will explain all at the end. Once again, a Vancouver-based coal shipping company has been recommended as a sacrificial pawn in the Canadian trade dispute with America. In a commentary on the Centre for International Governance Innovation website, author of the former CIBC World Markets chief economist Jeff Rubin has suggested that Ottawa should consider imposing its carbon tax on the trainloads of US thermal coal that are shipped out of Vancouver's West Shore terminals. Given how critical the terminal is to the US thermal coal exports, such a move would be a death knell to President Trump's oft-stated promise of resuscitating a badly crippled coal industry, and might be the motivation needed to reconsider the tariffs against Canada. Rubin wrote in a commentary that also appeared in the Vancouver Sun and many other post-media websites. Rubin noted that the former BC Premier, Christy Clark, previously threatened a 70% carbon tax on coal shipments passing through West Shore terminals in response to US duties on softwood lumber. West Shore Terminals Limited partnership has 300 employees, with many of them at its Delta coal port near the, I've no idea how to say that, Tazwazan ferry terminal. It's obviously some Indian name. The company says on its website that each coal train represents more than 14 jobs and $3.1 million in economic activity. It states that this is enough to pay for 33 hip surgeries or 8 school teachers or 24-hour doctor care for 50 days. West Shore Terminal receives coal from Canadian deposits in BC and Alberta, as well as from Powder River Basin, Montana and Wyoming. Last year, then Premier Christy Clark said in a public letter that 6.2 million tons of US coal are shipped through BC. America is the world's second largest producer of coal, behind China. The US coal bound for Delta Port is carried by Burlington, Northern, Santa Fe trains. The railway is owned by US billionaire, what a surprise, Warren Buffett, who was a vocal Hillary Clinton supporter in the last presidential election. The vast majority of US coal exported through BC goes to South Korea, Japan and Chile. West Shore Terminal says on its website all 3 nations have taken steps to apply carbon pricing when the coal is used. South Korea has an emissions trading program, Japan has carbon tax, and Chile will also have a carbon tax in place commencing in 2018. West Shore's parent company is West Shore's Terminals Investment Corporation, which is 32.31% owned by Vancouver businessman Jimmy Patterson. The next largest shareholder is Burgundy Assessment Management with a 13.46% holding, according to West Shore's May 10th Management Information Circular and Proxy Statement. The company's directors include Jim Patterson Group President Glenn Clark and the Jim Patterson Group's Managing Director and Legal Services Nick Desmarais. A new director on the board is former Surrey Mayor and former Conservative MP Diane Watts, who was elected on June 19 at an annual general meeting. Watts came second in a BC Liberal leadership race earlier this year. Just a little aside there for a minute. The former Conservative MP Diane Watts, that's Conservative, that's like Republican, and then she came second in a BC Liberal leadership. This is why I don't trust these people, because they're not one flavour or the other. They depend on who's winning. Anyway, I digress. To date, most of the Canadian government's recently announced duties on US imports have been on products from swing states in the US presidential race. These include Florida, Pennsylvania, and Ohio. Montana and Wyoming, which is the home of Powder River Basin, have long been considered safe Republican hamlets in presidential elections. Montana has only gone Democrat once in the last 13 presidential elections, and that was only because an independent Ross Perot siphoned off enough Republican votes to give Bill Clinton a narrow win in 1992. The last time the Democrats won Wyoming in a presidential election was Lyndon Johnson in 1964. Rubin's commentary appeared shortly after he wrote a longer paper exposing that the United States is closer to meeting its emission targets under Donald Trump than Canada is under Justin Trudeau. Yes. This has occurred despite Trump pulling out of the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement, which aims to limit the average global temperature increase to 2 degrees Celsius above where it was at the start of the Industrial Revolution. The significant difference in emission performance is a result of very different trajectories of energy-related emissions in the two countries, Rubin revealed. In the United States, such emissions have fallen steadily over the last decade as natural gas has usurped coal's once dominant role in the US power sector. North of the border, oil sands emissions continue to be the fast-growing source of emissions in Canada, as emission-intensive situ oil sands production continues to increase despite unfavourable economics. Today, new 10% duties take effect on a long list of American imports, including aluminum, orange juice, mayonnaise, salad dressing, inflatable and motorised boats without outboard motors, sailboats, refrigerator, freezers, licorice, candy, toffee and roasted coffee. A larger 25% duty has been imposed on US imports such as steel products. This comes in response to Trump's May 31 decision to hit Canadian and Mexican and European Union steel imports with a 25% duty, while also imposing 10% duties on aluminum imports. So there's the piece. This is the point I want to make to you. British Columbia, which is a province of Canada on the west coast, has implemented their own fake climate change charges, and many Canadians have been suffering for a couple of years now, suffering very badly with higher electricity prices, gas prices, etc., supposedly to get them off those dreaded fossil fuels. And oh yes, Vancouver, BC has a massive homeless problem and drug problem. Sound like any state you know in the west coast of America? So here we are, banning this and taxing that, trying to stop carbon-based products of all sorts, even though it's the dumbest thing you could do. Yet the ports in BC are shipping coal from the US to China and other places. The other point I want to make out is this. That must be a very large carbon footprint, and I'm sure they're going to offset that by buying offsets and driving Ubers. This, quite frankly, is hypocrisy hard at work in Canada, and it's do as I say, not as I do. This is just proof positive to me that this carbon tax is fake. It's just fake. Why is it that other countries can use coal, but we're not allowed to? We can ship it through our ports, but we're not allowed to use it. Something really stinks in Denmark, doesn't it, ladies and gentlemen? And that's my comment. Join us weekdays, 11:45 Eastern, on Spreaker.com/aradio. You can find more at aradio.wordpress.com, where you can find links to us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Gab and email. We're also on Spotify. Just go to the podcast section and type Canadian Politics with a twist and you'll find us. We are continuing to reach out to you, so please pass on these links. Please click on the follow button on Spreaker.com. You can listen to all our morning moments at Spreaker.com under A Radio. That's EHRADIO, A Radio, and click on the like button. And you can hear a review of our morning moments on WHBJ-DB, News Talk Radio on Spreaker.com. Join us and many others. And you can find all our podcasts and morning moments at aradio.wordpress.com. Click on the Morning Moments tab.